Hedonist, impulsive, lacking self-control, hot-headed, brash, and reckless. If you can relate to any of these words, being impulsive in love, this might be for you. So I don't know like how it feels for other people, but for me, impulsiveness feels like an itch and a throbbing heartbeat as well. But it's the kind that's under your skin and it's in my brain, and I actually like can't get rid of it. I can't stop obsessing over the thought or the action until the action's actually happened. And then I get the dopamine rush. So like you're out in a bar or a club or something along those lines and you've been drinking. So, you know, your defenses are down a little bit. You know, you're feeling a little bit loose and you get this desire, this impulse to text your ex, right? And we've all been there. I think most of us have been there. And every single one of your girlfriends, even some of my male friends are like, don't do it. Don't do it for the love of God. Why are you doing this to yourself? And you do it. And then immediately you get the rush. And then 2 seconds later, it's like, why haven't they texted back yet? And then you get this immediate sense of regret and, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then the shame and, oh God. And then it's such a spiral, right? And really, it kind of just comes down to this intense feeling of uncomfortability or discomfort in my own skin.
Yeah.
And as a result, a lot of people look at me and go, oh, you're so impulsive. Or, you know, you're such a hedonist, because what they perceive it as is basically not having any kind of self-discipline or self-restraint.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it. And so it's kind of like, when you combine low self-esteem, a lifetime of feeling misunderstood, and loneliness, it sort of, it comes down to all I'm really looking for in that moment is somebody to have a connection with, right?
Yeah.
And so when our brains love dopamine, we love the feeling of being in lust. I mean, that giddy head rush, you know, the heart pound when someone we like texts us, and, you know, that thrill of the chase even, it can be a little addictive.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when all that goes away, sometimes, you know, we feel a bit deflated. And especially like when things get too calm, we feel like we're in a bit of a rut, or, you know, things get, dare we say, boring. That rush is gone, and then we mistake safety for complacency. And so we want to go and we sort of want to go find the next hit. And so if we're not careful, it can end up becoming this like subconscious, repeatable pattern. And, you know, we end up outwardly searching for the person that's going to give us the next hit.
Where's it going to come from? I need the good stuff.
I need the good stuff, right? And so, like, while fundamentally it goes against the principle of ADHD, but it also ironically fits the autistic rules, our brains sort of crave the certainty, the unpredictability, and also the predictability at the same time. Like, I know with my brain, I did seek out the same patterns that I had as a child, because those patterns to me, even though they weren't necessarily, the situation wasn't necessarily safe, it was predictable.
Yeah.
And so there was like this boom, and then there was this bust. And it means, you know, even if the situation is toxic or volatile, like that's what I was used to. And then that's what I went to basically, you know, seek and crave. And so I found that when I was looking back on my dating history, and I think, you know, your beautiful pattern recognition brain probably spotted this long before I did, is I would go from, because it's much easier to see other people's, right, than it is to see our own. And I would go from Mr. Safe to Mr. Unpredictable, because Mr. Unpredictable would essentially push me towards, you know, feeling like, oh, I've got to get somebody who's like straight as an arrow and like really good on paper. And I'd get that person be like, oh my God, you're suffocating me. And then swing back out. And so it would be this wild sort of swing, and sort of, you know, finding that person in the middle was really difficult. And on top of that, it really sucked too, because sometimes I'd get criticism for not just being impulsive, but also having like really high standards. Like, my standards are too high, you should settle. You know, this person looks really good on paper. Like, what's wrong? Why don't you like them? And it's like, well, that person doesn't actually give me the things that I need.
And it's
So
interesting, right? Like there's always that misfit between what someone looks good on paper and whether they're the right someone for you. And so many of us, and like I see it in my clients all the time as well, right? It's attachment theory, and it's those childhood patterns of we either go through trying to replicate what's happened before because it is that safety, or we go through and we try and change the ending because it's like, we sort of look at it and go, I'm on this ride, but maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe this time it'll be different. And it's like, well, fundamentally, I'm still the same person and I'm still chasing the not great things in other people. So chances are it's not going to be different.
yeah, absolutely. And it's in a weird way, it's also sometimes not even just about the person, right? When our brains, when our bodies, they get used to a certain amount of chemicals, whether it's dopamine or serotonin or cortisol, and it's so illogical when you say it out loud, because it all just sounds like we are chemically crazed humans, literally swinging wildly from one thing to the next, seeking out whatever chemicals our brain emits that our body is used to.
Spoiler alert, that's exactly what we are.
Who knew? But nobody ever wants to think of themselves like that.
Sure.
And so if you, when you look at fight, flight, fawn or freeze, when we're in these scenarios that we potentially haven't consciously created, our brains are actually subconsciously seeking out these particular scenarios so that we do get that cortisol, so that we do be, so that we can literally spring into action. So we can either play out whatever narrative we've constructed for ourselves. Are we the persecutor? Are we the victim? Are we the rescuer? And so it can feel all encompassing, and just like it is so hard to see the trees of the forest. And so what ends up like playing out is that we find very similar people from our childhood to play out the narrative that we're subconsciously seeking. And then our conscious brain is like struggling to accept the reality of either the relationship or the situation that we're in that just really isn't good for us in the long term, or that we know, like, and we're being told by all these other people that, oh, you deserve better, or maybe it's time to take a breath rather than act and react, to try to find that place to respond. It often ends up, or it can end up, like two ends of the spectrum. So because black or white, all or nothing, we're very funny in the way that we can create the way that we protect ourselves. So one end of the spectrum is we've had a lifetime of abandonment, feeling powerless. So we change the dynamic to make sure that we're always in control. We keep people guessing about how we feel. We make sure to never let people like too near us, to make sure that, if they leave, then we just won't be hurt by it. And that often ends up becoming, if I run away first, like then
it'll
I
hurt
win.
less. If I say the bad thing about me, it'll hurt less when somebody else says it. And again, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah.
And it's just such a self-fulfilling prophecy too. If we never let anybody see our vulnerability, our soft sides, if we let people get too close, then the reality is, you might get hurt. But that's also a part of life. So either what happens is they get bored because they can't ever really kind of get close to you. So then they end up leaving, and thus reinforcing the narrative that everyone will always leave us.
Yeah.
The other end of the spectrum is something I know that I've been guilty of a lot. And I think you used to have a phrase for it sometimes, which is just like Hannah's in her wee phase, which is, just jump in, right? Don't look, just jump.
Just jump. And then we do this and we do that and we like this and we want that. Yeah. And that real intense bonding phase as well.
Identity.
Yeah.
Yes.
So going in fast, it was the double-edged we. It was like the we, and the also we is as in the couple too. Yeah. And it was like we're in and we're all or nothing.
Yeah. The boom bust, right?
Yeah.
So, jumping in head first from the early stages, like, this is it, this is amazing, this is incredible. And, just that the oxytocin feelings and just how heady they are, and that rush, and, and it's always going to be like this forever and ever. And then we open ourselves up to the other person that we're interested in. Like, I trauma dumped on people. I was trying to find somebody who would rescue me. And I just wanted to find somebody that would not just love me, but love all of me immediately, right now. Here I am, take it or leave it.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And, given the collection of, like all of my different traumas, all of, their different traumas, that's an enormous thing to put on the other person from the get-go. And, particularly when that person's like trying to get to know us.
Yeah.
And I remember I was seeing this trauma counselor a while ago, and I remember, kind of recounting to him a date that I had just been on where I'd shared what I thought was, openly and honestly, and about all the stuff that I had been through, because some alcohol had been involved and the connection between my brain and my tongue was apparently disconnected. And he asked me what I thought the purpose of, letting it all out and, showing the person everything from the beginning was. And I said, well, I thought I showed how strong it was, how strong I was, how I'd been through all this stuff and I'd come out on the other side, much stronger. And he told me something that really changed my perspective on how I communicated with people, which is that he said it didn't make me look strong, it made me look wounded.
Ooh, ow.
Yeah. So I realized that I was waiting. I was using it as a kind of a rescuer bait, essentially.
Yeah.
I was waiting for someone to take all that, pick me up if they were physically able to, and, make it all better, essentially. And I realized he was right. I was kind of using that as a way to test people to see whether or not they wanted to rescue me from my past and my history and give me a bigger, brighter future. Yeah. And that I was trying to find someone, like stronger than me. And it completely changed the way I approach dates.
And it's interesting as you say that too, right? That impulsivity coming through from a perspective of like, I must test this person and going out and doing it and like getting it all out there straight away. And that's sort of being where the dark side of impulsivity comes from in relationships too. But like, someone sitting there and observing you, over the past 30 years too. To me, though, that's where a lot of your fun stuff comes from in relationships too, and where a lot of like the good, positive attributes come from with you as well. Like it's that sense of mischievous and that sense of fun and that sense of adventure and a little bit of
really dark sense of humor.
Yeah. You never know what she's going to say next. But yeah, it seems to be where that side of things, lives as well. But that I have an idea and then either just going with it straight away before we've thought about it, or I have an idea and then I'm going to be thinking about that idea like nonstop until I actually scratch that itch. Switching impulsivity or the dark side of impulsivity, it's almost like there are those two paths is what I'm hearing. One is like the instant I do it without thinking about it and it's a learned behavior and it's innate and it's like I don't even know what's happening until it's done. And then there's also the side where it's almost like you're on a roller coaster, right? And you sort of got this idea in your head of an action that you want to take and then you're thinking about it and just riding up. And then you finally do it and then it's, woo, and my brain, the jukebox is like, we're free falling. But like you're down the other side, right? Like, and that's where then the guilt and the rumination and all of those kind of things, kick in and why did I do that?
Why did I?
Again.
Yeah. Because look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with sharing those parts of yourself with someone, right? Over time.
Yeah.
But it's the impulsivity that just kind of kept me talking. And the longer I talked, the more I shared and the more I was in like the dangerous territory of oversharing.
Yeah.
And, in one of our previous episodes, we've talked about the too much label.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of it came from. It was, this is too much because like I can't deal with, or I feel like you've got too much baggage.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, I think there's like this, again, there's the uncomfortability trauma of, I don't want to have to deal with all your stuff as well as all of my stuff. It's so tough. Dating, tough. Like I really feel for people still in the dating world.
I wouldn't do it again.
I wouldn't.
So what's the strategy? I was just going to ask, what's a strategy or what's a tip that you might give to people that if they're struggling with impulsivity while they're out dating, like, and they're putting it all out there. They're saying the things or they're doing the actions. What's like one piece of advice or suggestion that you would give to people?
Ooh, I think that, impulsivity, and when it's in that fun and spontaneous stage, when you do get that rush, but you're also trying to build something that you want to have, that like solid foundation at the same time, as well as the ability to, go out at midnight for ice cream or something along those lines. So I think one thing would be, if you do get the urge to text that person again because you haven't heard back from them for like half an hour, take a breath.
Yeah.
Sit with yourself, honestly, and it's the same thing with that I do for like food cravings, that I do for, most kinds of situations, is that if I can breathe for 20 seconds and just hold myself in that space, I can often find that the urge will go away. And so I think it might have been Michelle Bridges or something like that, who once a time that said self-discipline is like a muscle. If you don't flex it or exercise it, then you sort of, you're not really making it stronger. And so my whole aspect was, one, to find somebody that could deal with me in all the sense of the terms, somebody who was compassionate and also understanding, who had done the work themselves, but also there was the work that I had to do on myself as well, which was part of it came from an anxious anxiety attachment, which is I was terrified that if I didn't touch base or didn't have those touchstones with that person, that they might forget about me, or worse, find somebody else. And so I just found that this act of surrender, essentially, that what's for me will stay and what's not for me will leave. And being okay in that space and just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable until that becomes comfortable.
I love it. So what I'm hearing there is creating the space, sitting in the uncomfortable feelings. We call that in therapy riding the wave, and just sitting in that space, allowing those, emotions to pass through you and knowing you're being okay, and then controlling what you can control. So I can't control where the other person writes back. I can't do what they can do, just surrendering to the moment.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, that's probably a great place to pause and a fantastic summary of being called impulsive in relationships. And if you like what you've heard, like and subscribe. And until next time, stay spicy.
Stay spicy.
You're listening to the NeuroSpice Life podcast
with Hanna and Freya, besties, brains, and more.
If you've enjoyed listening, follow us on YouTube or your favourite podcast app and share it with someone else who knows the sting of a sticky label.
We'll see you next time. Until then, stay spicy, stay wonderful.